I am glad you're all here tonight for From Code to Call for Papers, crafting abstracts that get you selected. And our goal tonight is to help explain the process, at least that CodeMash uses for the selection process, to give you an idea of things that can help you be successful in writing your abstract, your title, your bio, and to give you some resources to help you be selected for CodeMash here in a couple weeks. So my name is Chris Judd. Um, in August, I will be at large. A couple things about me. I just recently completed my executive MBA at The Ohio State University, Fisher College of Business. I'm a Java champion. I am a John Wells certified uh, trainer, practitioner, speaker, coach. I also am AWS certified. I've run the Central Ohio Java Users Group for over 25 years. And when I'm not writing code, I tend to write words. So I've co-authored some computer books and even a children's book. So why am I the one talking to you tonight about how to get selected? Well, first of all, I was the only one who volunteered. So that's why you're stuck with me. But I do have some other credentials as well. I've spoken at over 120 conferences in 4 countries. I've helped organize CodeMash every year, and most of those years as a speaker committee member. I've also been on selection committees for other conferences too. And at the end of the selection process, we make available the opportunity to get feedback on abstracts. And I'm usually the individual to give the abstract feedback. So I've read lots and lots of abstracts. I've written lots of abstracts. So I'm a pretty ideal person to come talk to you about this. And this photo here is a photo of me right after I crossed the 100 conference barrier back in 2019. So let's start with some ways to make sure that you can be selected at CodeMash. You must be, or at least some beliefs of what you need to do in order to be a speaker at CodeMash. First of all, you must be an expert on your topic. You must have all of your slides completed ahead of time, know everything that you're going to say during your presentation, and it all has to be fully baked when you submit your abstract. You have to have spoken at lots of conferences all across the world. You have to be a published author of at least 10 books. You have to be either an MVP or some type of champion. You have to have the most popular YouTube channel, podcast, or Pluralsight course. Or you have to work for a really big tech company. And those are the keys to getting selected to speak at CodeMash and most other conferences. Or option H, you must be Guy Royce. So obviously, these are a set of myths that a lot of people have when submitting to conferences, and none of these are true. However, being Guy Royce might help you get selected. So you're here because I have a feeling you want to speak at CodeMash or some other type of conference, and you're in the right place because that's what we're going to talk about. But I have a question for you. Why do you want to speak at a conference? Knowing why you want to speak at a conference and having a compelling reason might help shape what topics you want to submit, what approaches you might want to take, how you might align your goals to this opportunity. And it might seem obvious to you, but maybe not. So, you really might want to think about that ahead of time and what your intention is for wanting to speak at a conference. So I have a list of a number of reasons why I see a lot of people wanting to speak at a conference. The first one being promotion, and that might be self-promotion or your company. So I started speaking at conferences when I was an independent consultant, and that was basically all of my marketing effort was speaking at conferences, and that proved to be very successful to me. You might work for a large company, and you might be in a role where you're doing developer advocacy, evangelism, relations, or DevRel. And so maybe you're wanting to promote a product or a service. Maybe it's for personal growth. Maybe you want to grow as a leader, and you know that being able to present yourself well and communicate concepts is a really important thing. So maybe you want to get practice speaking in public and grow in that way. Maybe you just want to learn a little bit more about a particular topic. And I find when I teach a topic, I get to know that topic much deeper. And so that is a great way of learning. I use that for my learning quite often. Maybe you just want to give back to the community. And probably the number one reason most people submit to speak at CodeMash is so they can get a free hotel room and a free ticket. So I don't know if anyone here wants to share maybe some reasons why they might want to speak at CodeMash.
I mean, that last one is the big one, but yeah, I'd say for me, like personal growth and giving back, or just it kind of sounds fun too, kind of. I mean, just being part of the community.
Yeah, it definitely can be fun. David, did you want to share?
Yeah. Actually, I spoke back in CodeMash like in 2012, so I'm older now. I had a blast. It was just so honestly, if I had to pick a reason, it's just fun. It was just so much fun. Um, to fly in, speak at a conference, it was a blast. Yeah.
Yeah, so having fun is a good reason. One of my other favorite reasons of speaking at conferences is you get access usually to other speakers, and getting to learn from them and getting to know them personally can be really helpful. So you're probably aware of the process, but just to call it out a little bit, it starts with picking a topic and a focus audience for your topic. Then you write a title, description, and bio. You submit that proposal or that abstract and wait for being selected or rejected. You prepare presentations, your presentation and the materials for that presentation. You rehearse it. You deliver that winning talk that everyone talks about. And then hopefully you reuse it, refine it, and repeat it. So we're going to talk about these a little bit more in depth. Now I'm going to start by talking about a minimum viable product, or an MVP. So just like when we build software, you don't want to build that Ferrari right up front. You want to start with something small that functions, that you can get feedback on really quickly, and then slowly add on to that as time goes on. And when I'm thinking about writing or preparing for a conference and writing an abstract, I think very much in this way. Like one of the myths that you have to have your slides already done ahead of time, that's really not the case. So to me, if I map the MVP process on top of the conference selection process, it looks like this, where I consider writing the title, the description, and the bio as that very minimum viable product. If your talk doesn't get selected, there's no reason to spend or waste any time on actually preparing the presentation. And unfortunately, a lot of people do it the wrong way, and they try to build the perfect presentation, and then it never gets selected. So treat it like that minimum viable product. Then the next layer that you add on is preparing the presentation materials, then rehearsing it, because then you'll get some feedback and you can make improvements, then deliver the talk for real, and then finally reuse and do it all over again, I think is the final thing, because as you deliver it more often, the better that presentation is going to give. So for tonight, we're focused on just these first 4 steps. I will mention very briefly some of the other things, but this is about getting you ready for the August 15th release, or the August 15th deadline. Well, that's the start of the presentation, or the start of the submissions, and then the end is the end of the month, the 31st. But we're getting you started for that and that minimum viable product. So we'll start with picking the topic and audience. So first thing you want to do is make sure that you know your audience. And I think this is super important. Reading a lot of the abstracts that we get for CodeMash, I see a lot of people not even realize who the audience is. And I don't know if they're just out there and they say, oh, there's a conference, it's at a cool water park. I'm going to submit, and they submit things that really have nothing to do with the audience that we see at CodeMash. It sounds like everyone here has been to CodeMash before, so you probably know the audience, but just to make sure that we're on the same page, the people attending CodeMash are usually professionals. They're in the field and they've been in the field for 5 or more years. We're talking about software developers, architects, DevOps, security DBAs, QA, designers, and the list goes on, even managers. So you want to make sure it's geared towards that professional. And an example of one that might not be is we often get a lot of talks like in the security track, how to use a password manager. Well, everybody going to that security track is probably a security professional or a professional software developer. So that's not really the right level for that audience. Remember that CodeMash is also multidisciplined. So sometimes we get, or oftentimes we get a lot of topics that are like really deep in the weeds in a particular technology because they're really excited about it and really love it. But because there's multiple disciplines, we have a lot of people that are coming in and out of different topics to get exposed to a variety of technologies. So if it's really deep in the weeds, it's probably not going to be well attended. To give you one example, we had somebody come speak about the class file format, the binary format of Java classes. That's a topic I would love as a Java champion. I find it rather interesting, but it's not going to be probably that interesting to JavaScript people or QA people. So it's not surprising we didn't get a ton of people attending that session, even though we had a really big name presenter giving it. Kind of a similar thing is you don't want to make your topic too niche, because if it's too niche, then you're going to have too much of a small audience. We have about 1,500 people that attend CodeMash every year. We have about 10 concurrent sessions. So we're hoping to get somewhere between 50 and 100 people per session. That doesn't always happen, especially if you're competing against Corey Howes, who will get a large majority of the people. But we don't want those 5 people attending a session. We want, a decent amount of people. And I think that's what you would want as a speaker as well. So try to not make your topics too nichey. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're submitting to another conference, it might not be the same thing. So if you were submitting to Java 1 for that class file format example, well, that would be ideal for that, but it might not be ideal for CodeMash. We want things that are, and your audience wants things that are timely. So to give you an anti-example, several years ago, we had somebody submit something about Java beans and how Java beans could be used in a particular way, and they're really excited about the topic. But to think about it, Java beans are kind of old hat, and a lot of people know how to do them. And when I really teased out what the speaker wanted to talk about, it wasn't so much Java beans, but that's the way the abstract was written. So they wanted to talk about some framework stuff that can sit on top of Java beans that were kind of cool, but it didn't come across in the abstract in the same way. It made it sound like old technology, not new technology. And you want to make sure that it's relevant to the audience that might want to attend it and something that they'd be interested in, could get value out of. Ideally, something that the Monday after the conference, they're able to apply and utilize in their daily work. Another really important thing to think about is you actually have 2 audiences. Your first audience of your abstract is going to be the selection committee. Those are the people who are going to review it and say it's in or out, it's selected or rejected. And so you want to make sure that what you're trying to communicate is really clear and that it excites the selection committee too, because if it doesn't leave an imprint on them, it doesn't impact them, it's probably not going to make it through that sieve to get to actually presenting. So that's your first audience. Imagine you were trying to evaluate your own abstract as should this get in the conference or not. That is a good mindset to have around that. The second audience is your attendees. So when you submit an abstract, the title and description that you fill in the abstract is exactly what's going to go on the website, in the mobile app, that's how the attendees will decide on what to attend during the conference. So you want to make sure that's well written as well. So where can you find inspirations about what topic that you might want to present? Well, I do a number of things. For one, I've read the book Building a Second Brain, and I use those techniques a lot. So I actually have a document where, as the year goes on, I put notes of, oh, I think this would make a good presentation. I think this would make a good topic, so that I can go back to it when it comes time to submit, just like we're about to do here in August. But also, if somebody comes to me and says, Chris, do you have any suggestions on topics? I can easily pull that up and give them those suggestions as well. So common ones, new technology would be a huge one. Things that are just becoming popular or are climbing that hype curve are going to be big options. They're also going to have probably the most competition as well. Maybe a topic that you desire to learn deeper would be another one. So for me, an example of that would be I was attending a lot of conferences and hearing a lot about Hadoop, but I wasn't actually seeing presentations on not actually how to use, set up, and run Hadoop jobs. So for me, that was well, if I can't find it, then I kind of need to build it myself. You might see needs at your office or in the community. So there was a time period when Java 8 came out that they changed the default TLS options, and at the same time, Let's Encrypt came out, and the JVM didn't know about Let's Encrypt. So lots of people were having problems with TLS. So I put together a how to debug TLS basically from a Java perspective that was huge at the time, and I still managed to deliver it like every year at my different clients because that topic comes up over and over again still today. You might look for different industry trends, see what's becoming popular, and jump on those bandwagons. I did that, for example, with cloud. You might have heard of this little thing called AI that's a little popular right now. That's going to have a lot of topics submitted to it. Several years ago, React was the most popular topic submitted. So look for those trends. Those can be other good ones, but also realize that that means you're going to have more competition probably in that same space. Ask others that you're working with or around you in the community, what would they like to learn? And then you can maybe tailor something to that. Look at other conferences, see what talks are being selected there that you think may or may not be selected at CodeMash or whatever conference you're targeting. And then finally, probably one of my most successful ways of coming up with inspirations is by actually out of anger. So what I mean by that is several years ago, Docker started becoming popular, and I attended a lot of Docker talks at conferences, and a lot of those Docker talks were focused on very esoteric, low-lying things related to Docker, but they didn't tell me how to use Docker as a developer. And I deeply saw the value in it from those presentations. So I saw the what and the why, but not the how. So I turned around and did a 4-hour workshop that I created around Docker, gave it multiple times, at least twice. The room had 200 people and more in it, which were quite interesting experiences because one time at CodeMash, because at that time it downloaded stuff from GitHub, GitHub actually turned off CodeMash. They thought it was a denial of service attack, so they said stop downloading things. Unfortunately, we had a booth for GitHub there. They noticed what was happening and let them know that no, this is legit. This is a conference going on, because I'm sure they were like, nobody from Sandusky, Ohio is downloading that many gigabytes. Another time I did the same talk at another conference and we had rolling blackouts. So there were so many people plugged in that a quarter of the room at different times kept going out. So anger can be a really great way when you're not seeing what you want personally out of conference talks to actually find that really interesting niche for yourself. Some other ways of getting some inspiration. We do an interest survey every year, and this is the results of the interest survey as of yesterday, and you can see that most people are looking for architecture, which surprised me a little bit because I thought it would have been AI, but AI is number 2, and number 3 is software quality. So you can use this to maybe gauge where you should be submitting. I'm going to give you some more insights too. So how many talks have been submitted and selected? So there's a lot of competition, and unfortunately we can't select everybody, and this gives you an idea of some of that. So last year, for the 2025 version of CodeMash, we had 168 submitted for AI ML data, and we could only select 14. So if you're like, I really want to, this goes back to your why, and you're like, I really want to talk about AI at CodeMash, and my goal isn't just to speak at a conference, but to actually speak about AI at a conference, you are competing against a lot of people. If your goal is to speak and the topic isn't as important, you might look at design, UX, UI, because you'll notice only 16 were submitted in that track. So playing the numbers game can sometimes help too. Another low track is mobile. Another thing to think about too is we're going to talk about the different types of session types later. A regular session is going to have more people submit to it than a workshop because the amount, or to a precompile because of the amount of time and effort it takes to put into it. So sometimes you might get luckier choosing the one that takes more time and effort. So this is 2024. The numbers look a little bit different. Data was the highest, which is probably because AI fit best into that category. But you can see that number 2 is teams and collaboration, and number 3 is career development. So sometimes those softer skills have a lot more submitted to them than what we would refer to as harder skills. And 2023 is kind of similar. Architecture, programming principles, team leadership were the highest, and again, we still had the kind of the lower end of mobile UI design and so on and so forth. So any questions so far? Okay. So writing your title, your description, and your bio. For your title, you want something that grabs the reader's attention. You want to get them thinking about that topic. And oftentimes when they're walking through the hallway, deciding at the last minute which one, a title that really pops is going to be the one that probably grabs their attention most. Making it memorable, and finally adding a little sizzle to it. And if you're not a Fortnite player, this is the sizzle skin from Fortnite. My son said I shouldn't put it in the presentation, but what does he know? How to write a good abstract. So Jim Holmes wrote this great blog post, and there's a link there at the bottom that covered some really important things that you should think about when writing an abstract. And I know it really spoke to me back in 2009. So I often refer to a lot of these same things, especially when I'm reviewing people's abstracts after CodeMash. And so the first one is, we already kind of talked about it, align your content to the event. Make sure it's appropriate for the audience that's going to be there, that it makes sense. Just like I said before, if you have a really deep topic you want to talk about in React, for example, CodeMash may not be the right conference. Maybe a user group for React or a React conference might be a better place. So think about that when you're putting together your abstract and your topic. Avoid overly broad sessions. Don't have a session. We're going to talk about AI and not, as developers, we know that there's generative AI, LLMs, there might be classification, vision, there's a lot deeper things. So don't make it too overly broad. We get a lot of those types of submissions, and we typically have to throw them out. And we're usually, if they're written to be so broad, we're kind of confused as reviewers of what really are they going to talk about. We want to make sure it's very clear to the audience. The title matters. I just talked about that. You want it to be catchy, memorable, have a little sizzle. but make sure it's not too cutesy. That can be a problem as well. Explain what the attendees will get out of that session. What will they walk away with? What type of knowledge? What skill will they be able to do that they couldn't do before they attended? Give examples of what's going to be discussed. What are the topics that are going to be covered within the session? We're going to talk about what's a part of the submission. Notes are one of them. So one of the things that you can, and it's a good idea to do, is if you've delivered this session in the past, is to include prior feedback so the reviewers know whether it was successful, whether it was well received previously, or whether you've done other conferences and have been successful with those. I'm going to write an abstract that's really concise, coherent. It's obvious what the attendees are going to get out of it. And then make sure, please, 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 I cannot stress this enough, that you edit it, re-edit it, and get it reviewed. It's obvious a large percentage of submissions we get every year was not reviewed by somebody else. The English is bad. It's totally unclear of what the author is trying to communicate or what they're going to cover. So please have it reviewed. I'm going to give you some tips on that in a little bit. Basically, one of the things I look for as a reviewer is the effort that you put into it. So if you don't put a lot of effort in it, that can be obvious. And a lot of people wait till the last minute. And the way I look at it is if you can't spend 15 minutes to a half an hour to put together a good, concise, coherent abstract that clearly communicates what you're going to discuss, what are the chances that you can put together a 1 or 4 hour presentation to cover that same topic? And you're probably, if you didn't put forth your effort on the abstract, you're not going to put forth the effort on the presentation. And we've had times where from a large technology company who works on the development team of that project just did a poor job. They're like, in this session, we're going to talk about the new features of technology X. And then when they didn't get selected, they were upset because they weren't selected. And we're like, well, the abstract was better from this other person. They're like, but they can't know as much as I do. Well, if you don't put forth the effort in making sure the abstract is good, then again, we can't guarantee you're going to put forth the effort to make sure the presentation is good. So here's an example. This is the abstract that I actually built for this presentation here. Hopefully, from code to call for papers, crafting abstracts that get you selected. Hopefully, that's memorable, a little sizzle, thinking about, okay, we're developers, but we're going to convert or become speakers. And then a lot of what Jim suggested on his blog post, making sure that the people know what they're going to get out of it. So we're going to learn how to clearly and compellingly communicate. This is going to be a little bit of a workshop. Now, I was going to do a little workshopy things, but ran out of time. I was going to have you propose topics that, and maybe we can do this at the end where you might tell me you have a topic idea and we could evaluate whether that makes sense or not as a group. I was going to do it in a post-it note, anonymous way, but again, I ran out of time. And it should be clear that we're going to break down how to choose a topic that resonates, how to write an abstract that captures attention, and how to avoid common mistakes. So that's what you're getting out of it. So hopefully you can see how this applies all of those techniques that we just had a moment ago. The other thing you're going to have to submit with your abstract is a bio. So in the bio, hopefully you're identifying why you're the right person to talk about the topic because you've been in that field for a long time or you have a lot of experience in that field. Hopefully you're explaining your background a little bit, whether sometimes people put what degrees that they have, other presentations or conferences they've spoken at. It's great to tell us that you have a dog and like taking dog walks, but we really want to find out a little bit more about who you are and how that's relevant to what you're speaking about, or what makes you interesting. As a part of the submission, we also have notes and comments, and this is super important, and most submitters don't take advantage of this as well as they should. So remember, the title and the description are presented on the website to the attendees. These notes and comments are only for the reviewers. So if you want to keep something private, sometimes somebody will be like, I want to have a big reveal during my presentation, but I think the reviewers knowing this will make it more likely that they'll be selected. Those are types of things you would put in the comments, or experience and feedback you've gotten before. Those can be valuable things. If we know that you've presented this at 5 other conferences and it was always well received, well, maybe it's going to be well received by CodeMash as well. If you have videos online so we can see how you present, what your style is, how your flow works, how your slides look, that can be helpful as well. Sometimes people will include an outline in the notes and comments. That can be helpful as well, because now we know you've thought through what's going to be in the content, and it's not just an abstract you threw together at the last minute, but we can see where you're going with the presentation. We know the focus of it, and so I highly recommend that. We do see a big mistake. Sometimes people will put an outline of their talk in the description. That is not where you want it. The attendees don't want a long outline. They just want a catchy, exciting abstract or description that will convince them that they want to go to the talk. And then any other details you think the committee should know, or sometimes people will have questions like, or comments like, I can only do this on Friday, or I'm coming from out of the country, or I might need to have a fee if it's one of the hardware related talks. So some of those types of things could also be appropriate for those notes and comments. And I can't stress enough, that's for the committee only. So I'm sharing this reluctantly with you, but I highly recommend using AI to help make your abstracts better. It does seem to, in my experience, make me sound like I know the English language. So I use it all the time. Here's an example of a prompt that I use specifically to write the abstract I just had on the previous one. And in this particular scenario, I told it to give me 2 options. I chose one of their titles, and then I merged the other 2 together, I think, to make a better option. And then I turned around and said, improve it yet again. And if you read the prompt, I even put the wrong word in and it still managed to figure out what I want. So in this case, I said, hey, I help run a technology conference. I'm responsible for the speakers. I help, it should have been, I help read submitted abstracts, choose speakers, and help to make sure that they have a great event. And I've been asked to develop a workshop to help new speakers pick a topic and write a compelling abstract. Give me a couple suggestions for titles of the workshop as well as possible abstracts. And it gave me some examples. Another way I've used this too is if I have a topic and a title, I can start with that. So here's another conference abstract I wrote where I said, write an interesting conference. So I didn't even do the right English in here. Write an interesting conference for a 30-minute talk about monitor your stuff with OpenTelemetry and AWS. And in this particular case, I really liked what it produced, and I just used it verbatim. And by giving it just the title, it came up with everything else. So like I said before, and I can't stress it enough, have somebody review your title, your description, and your bio before you submit them. Ask of a peer, maybe somebody you work with, somebody in the industry. And then the questions I like to ask when I do this, I have a couple friends that I always reach out to before I submit. I always ask them, would you attend this after they read it? Why or why not? Is this title and description enticing? Is it clear? Does it make sense what we're going to cover? And then, do you believe I'm qualified? Do you believe I'm qualified to present that topic? Or is it unclear that I'd be the right person to deliver that message? Another important thing we have to cover, because we put it on the website, we communicate it in the email, but it is getting missed. For the last 3 years, we've been doing a blind round of evaluation. So the very first time we look at the submissions, we don't have access to the name or the bio. We are just looking at the title, the description, and the notes. And nowhere in those should you put anything that identifies who you are. So your name shouldn't be in there. Probably not the company you work for. If you are adding videos like I suggested on notes, or a link to your blog post, or either a blog post or your blog, those should not be identifiable. So if it is a part of your URL, use a URL shortener. And the committee takes a lot of time to make sure that we're not seeing who it is. And we do just an up down on all those talks during that blind evaluation. If there is identifying information, you are automatically kicked out, and at least that, I should say, that particular talk is automatically kicked out, and you have to wait till next year. So please, no PII information included at all. Unless you want to give us your credit card numbers with the CV code, then we might consider it. Here's some important don'ts that I see that are mistakes happen quite often, including that PII information. Like I just said, you're automatically excluded for that talk. Don't rely on name recognition. We've had several people who assume everyone knows who I am, and they will give us a 1-sentence abstract. And like I already said, if you're not going to put in the time, you're probably not going to put in the time for the full session. And so during that blind round, they get kicked out because we don't know who they are. All we see is the 1-sentence answer. Don't assume because you are or work for a sponsor that you're going to get a regular speaking slot. You have a separate sponsors speaking slots. You might get one of those, but that doesn't guarantee you get a regular one. We have a firewall between the selection committee and the sponsorship committee. We, as the selection committee for speakers, have no idea who's sponsoring. And I did have a large sponsor one year come search me out in the conference, find me, drag me to one of the sponsor session rooms, and say, look, this room is packed. Why it wasn't selected as a regular session? Well, I went back and I looked up the record, and a lot of the things we said not to do, they put the outline in it. They put their bio in the description. It was unclear what they were going to talk about, so on and so forth. And I literally sent him exactly what was submitted. There was bad English in it. And I said, would you have selected this? And he had to sheepishly said, no, I wouldn't. That does not look like quality work. So again, sponsorship does not guarantee a regular speaking session. Kind of similar to this, I suggest not having your assistant submit your abstract for you. Now, you may not have assistants, but it is obvious that we do have speakers that have assistants do it. And I think the previous example I gave with the sponsor, I think they did have an assistant submit it for them and didn't know how to actually submit to a conference and basically messed it up for them. Don't submit your outline as a part of the description. We have that happen quite a bit. It makes it large and unwieldy to read and confusing. And don't make your descriptions or notes a novel. I mean, we've had some that are literally pages and pages. It could have been a small book. So you want it to be concise, brief, and right to the point. Those are very common mistakes I see over and over again.
Chris, I had a question
Yes.
about that last slide. So, like, roughly what percentage do you think people just disqualify themselves. Like they submit and they do one of these things that are at a disqualifying level, like they include PII. You said that was disqualifying. And so like say there's 100 entrants, like would 50 of them just do one of these things wrong? Or like, do you have a rough idea of, I'm just trying to figure out my competition here.
Yeah.
Like, what am I up against? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not quite 50%. I mean, it's probably closer to 10%. And the first year we
Okay.
did the blind, it was easily 10%, maybe a
Okay.
little bit higher.
Okay.
But it's also sometimes those people who think that their name recognition should get them the slot that are surprised that they got excluded because of PII. So we're trying to really stress that and the importance of it. So we get we can find those diamonds in the rough. We can get speakers that haven't necessarily spoken at CodeMash or maybe other conferences too, to give them their shot.
Thanks.
And we also have there's one person who we are the wrong audience for them. They come from a law enforcement background, and they keep, for example, submitting talks about physical security and other topics that really aren't the focus of CodeMash. And so getting some of this word out either hopefully saves them time that they're wasting submitting here if they were to attend and watch this, or better be able to focus it, or in their case, they're one of the ones that gives us this large novel that nobody would read. And I'm pretty sure not all the reviewers read the whole thing because it's just way too long. But when we're also talking about, we have about 130 slots total. So because of that limited amount, you don't want anything to prevent you from making that list, right? So talking about these don'ts, I think, are important, because if you just mess up one little one, that can have a big impact because of the percentage that are being selected versus not being selected.
Yeah.
Going back to that graph, which I'll show again in a minute. I highly recommend you read this link before you submit. There's some other great information about what should be in an abstract, title, bio, but also the whole process that we go through, and you'll get a better understanding. We've had that up for there for years, but I'm not convinced everyone reads it before they submit. We have several types of sessions that you should be aware of. We have a pre-compiler. Those happen on Tuesday and Wednesday. Those are 4-hour longs. The goal is for those to be hands-on so that people are writing code, or if there are softer skills, maybe getting up, moving around, collaborating together, those types of things. We have general sessions. These are 1-hour sessions. These are on Thursday and Fridays. Last year, we introduced bite-sized breakout sessions, which are 2 hours long, and those are on Thursday, Friday, because we had some people saying they wanted a little bit more hands-on, but they couldn't make Tuesday and Wednesday. So we kind of met in the middle and came up with these breakout sessions. We have makerspace sessions. These are 2-hour hands-on, where they're typically building a physical product out of IoT, soldering, something like that. And there's usually a kit involved, and then an additional fee for that kit so they can take it home with them. And if you're interested in CodeMash, we have 1-hour CodeMash sessions that are geared towards children 5 to 17. And those are Tuesday through Friday. We also have kids dives, which are intended to be for kids from 12 to 17. These are 2 hours long, and those are also Tuesday through Friday. There is something called lightning talks. Those are one night. Those are like 5-minute sessions. Those you do not get a free ticket to or a hotel room. So those are usually intended for people already coming to the event. We have a number of different traps to submit to. And again, last year's acceptance rate there. So picking the right topic can give you some advantages. So going back to, I think it was David's question, If you're trying to get an AI slot and you mess up one of those don'ts, your chances of getting one of the 14 slots is greatly reduced. So let's talk about submitting the proposal a little bit. We do use Sessionize, and I've taken a screenshot of what we are configuring right now. So this may change a little bit. I know that one thing that's not on here that getting ready for this actually helped us to realize is Notes is not on here, but Notes will be on there. One important thing to note is we do have a maximum of 10 submissions per speaker. So we had problems in the past where somebody was a speaker of a long time and they basically put in their whole catalog of talks for the last 25 years, and it's just too much work for the reviewers. And it is very, very rare that we pick more than 2 talks from any one speaker. Now, I will say you do have a better chance if you have more than 1 talk, because if you have more than 1 talk, we are a business. We do have to break even at the end. So if we can get a twofer by having one person speak twice, that saves us money on hotel rooms and food. And so I do recommend doing more than 1 talk submission. Again, only professional speakers, people who we really trust, would we ask them to do more than 2 talks, but you might get selected for both. So you'll have a session title. We already talked about what you'd want to do there. Description, we talked about what to do there. The session formats are exactly what I just talked about before. Is it the precompile, the general? Is it the breakout? So you select the format. You can put some tags. So you can tag, this is related to Java or .NET or JavaScript, so on and so forth. And even though we have this big must select box that says, I agree that about the PII requirements below, so not including those things, people will check it and still fill their abstracts with PII information. Please don't do that. You will be eliminated. And then you notify that you'll make sure that you will receive those emails. It can be very frustrating to us when we're trying to reach out to a speaker to get their final confirmation that they'll be coming to speak so that we can get the rooms reserved and so on and so forth. And it's going to spam or they're ignoring them for some other reason. Then you'll also include a bio. So you'll want to make sure that bio is interesting and talks about what we said before. We do require we request a phone number in case we can't reach it via email. We capture pronouns. If you're coming from out of the country, it's helpful for us to know that. And if your employer is picking up the hotel room, because again, we are a business, we do need to break even at the end of the day. Everyone involved is volunteers, so none of us make any money, but we do need to stay in the black so we can continue year after year. So when employers can pay for the hotel, that's advantageous for doing that. And I said there will be a note section before this goes live. And then you also have to agree that your personal information is going to be shared. I mean, if you get selected, I think you want it on the website so that people know that you're going to be speaking and who you are and so on and so forth. So the calendar this year and every year, we always start the Sessionize collecting of abstracts on 8/15, and we always end it on 8/31, no matter the days of the week. And so same will be true this year. You need to have your submission in by 11:59 Eastern Daylight Time. And I'll be honest, we get the curve. So we get very few in the beginning, and then right at the end is when all the procrastinators submit their talks. So we get most of them in that last 24 hours. And then you'll have to wait for selection. And I wish it wasn't the case, but these numbers show it. Unfortunately, most people get rejected. We wish we could accept everybody, but we just can't. There's not enough time probably in the year for all the talks to happen. So don't be surprised. I know it can be disheartening, but I would suggest you put in the effort into the title, the description, the bio, submit it to user groups, submit it to other conferences. Maybe they'll pick it up. Maybe they'll be the right venue. Hopefully you will get selected, and then we can celebrate with you and you can start preparing for the conference. If not, if you get rejected, well, this is an opportunity to learn from that. Go back and review your abstract, ask for feedback from the speaker committee, and then try to use it again. I know first several times I submitted to conferences, I got rejected, and then I went and read the abstracts that were accepted, and I learned a lot from that process. And so eventually I started getting selected more and more. So any questions so far?
I'm not sure if now is the right time for this question, but is it common to have the same kind of session submitted as different types? So like, I thought I saw some last year or in previous years where it was a 1 hour session or the workshop version of it.
Yep. So that can be fairly common. We typically would only select one or the other, and this would be a good time to use that notes to really communicate to the committee why you're submitting twice, why it makes sense to be a regular session and why it makes sense to be a breakout or a full precompile. Because we would want to know what you would do differently. And then we would then have the option to select maybe either based on our needs to fill a slot or based on if we thought it made sense to do it in one format or another. But yeah, a lot of speakers will submit it in multiple formats, but just be helpful to us and use the notes and really explain why.
Okay.
Do you have? Yeah, I was wondering.
David.
Yeah. Do you have? Maybe it's not a difficult question here. It's easy a question. Do you have an archive of like abstracts, like from last year's talk? Is there a website I can go to and see what was submitted in August of 24 for the 25 CodeMash? Like, so in other words, so I can learn what a good abstract looks like or get an idea, just like you have mentioned, you learn from.
Yeah, there is. It's on our website, and what we do is we archive them as a PDF, so you can get the PDF and look through them. If you send me an email, and I'm going to give you my email as well as the general speaker email,
Yeah,
I can find that URL and get it to you if you wish.
yeah. Is your email like on the, like, how would I get your email?
I'm going to.
Oh,
I have 2 more slides, and you'll see them on the side.
oh, okay.
So these remaining 4 bullet points are topics that we're not going to go into depth, but I just want to hit them real quick. If you get selected, you may or may not be aware, we can help you with your presentation and materials. We have a mentorship program that you can opt into, and an experienced speaker will work with you on your specific needs. If you wanted to have them review your slides, or you wanted to ask them, does this topic make sense, or did I communicate this well? Those are things that happen after you get selected. So we can provide that for you. We have a lot of people participate in it. The participation depends on you and your mentor and how you want to set that up. Sometimes people meet very regularly. Sometimes it's just a one-time check-in. Sometimes they say, you know what, I got a handle on this. I don't need help. So it can vary very much on what you get, but we can provide you with that help. I highly recommend rehearsing it, whether you do that internally with your company, with your friends, or even better yet, user groups. User groups are always looking for content. And by delivering it in front of a live audience, you're going to get feedback. Hopefully you will solicit feedback, and you'll use that to improve it and make it better. And I know come January, you're going to deliver a killer talk, and we're all going to be talking about it, and you're going to get great reviews, and we're going to make sure you come back. But I don't want to miss this again. I highly recommend you reuse your presentation. it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to build a good presentation. You want to get as much use of it as possible. And I learned this by speaking on the No Fluff Just Stuff tour, because once we get a talk selected on No Fluff Just Stuff, they ask us to give it over and over and over and over and over again. And you really hone that presentation and you really get an opportunity to dive deep into that topic. And you don't want to spend all that time and not use it. Now, that said, there have been times I put together content. I had one on one-time password token generation, and I thought it was going to be a good talk. I delivered it once. I was like, you know what? This is not really a fun talk to deliver. It was more basic than I expected when I got started with it, and I chose not to do it again, but that wasn't my intent going into it. So find a way to reuse it and get a twofer out of it and just benefit from it over and over again, whether that's just delivering at work or other places. And then each time you do go through it, find ways to improve it and make it better. So I wish you all good luck. I told you, David, I was going to give you the email address. So our general email address is speakers@codemash.org. I will take questions here in just a minute, but if you have questions after the presentation and you want to get information, if you email that, one of the people on the committee will get back to you pretty quickly. This is my information. So my CodeMash email, my personal email, my phone number if you really want to get a hold of me, and then some websites. So there's a URL to the slides if you want the slides, as well as a QR code. And I'm willing to answer any questions you might have.
All right. So you said we should get our abstract reviewed after we've written it. Who do you recommend we should ask to review them?
So I recommend at least a peer in the industry, so maybe somebody you work with. If you can't find somebody or you want to, you can run it by me and I'll give you feedback. Just be prepared. I give lots of detailed feedback. There might be I might run out of red pixels, maybe. You never know. But that's how I would do it. I have, let's say, a board of directors of a couple friends that I talk a lot of shop with. Those are the people I go to. And so I'll give you one example. Steve Swing was one until he passed away recently. Jim Shingler is another one. These are people I know that I can trust and will give me honest feedback, even if I don't want to hear it about what I've written. But they've been good sounding boards throughout the years.
Okay.
Laura, if you're still there, is there anything I missed or anything you think they should be aware of as well?
No, I think you covered the main topics here. So thank you so much for the presentation. And remember, the CFP opens August 15th and closes the 31st. We're really excited, and I believe this is being recorded, so we'll also send this out to those who registered. So thank you again, Chris.
Thanks,
John,
Chris.
any more questions? I mean, you have a chance to ask what happens behind the scenes that can help you be successful.
Just out of curiosity, so like you can see, like from a trend perspective, you were showing all those different graphs, and you were seeing like all these different AI. There's a lot of competition, say on the AI or on the career development. Those are some of the examples where you have a lot of submissions, and you only have like say, I'm just looking at AI, 14 accepted. So strategically speaking, like I'm just curious, why not? I don't know, bump that 14 up to say 20, or like, have a different quota, say, hey, we'll allow more AI talks, just because it's obviously something that's a lot of people are submitting for, and there's good demand for it too, I guess. It's not just arbitrary. There are a lot of people want to hear that stuff. Just wondering, does that factor in, or do you just not even look at that? You just like, we're gonna pick the best, set of talks. Forget the, how does that work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So It is not arbitrary, and it's not based on submissions because people could be interested in talking about a topic, but the attendees might not be as interested in attending those topics. Now, that may not be true with AI, but it may be true in other categories. So what we use, that interest survey I showed you before, we use that. And then we also have how many people attended talks previous years. And so we look at those tracks as well. And then we try to get a decent budget of, based on the rooms that we have, the interest survey, the attendance previously, and that's how we come up with those accepted numbers. Sometimes we have to adjust them slightly each year. I mean, there's a number of things that might happen underneath the covers. Like I said, sometimes we might need to double a speaker up to save rooms because we also have room and speaker budget allowances, or sometimes those talks too can cross multiple boundaries. And so one thing I guess I should probably say too is you might submit something that you've identified as architecture. We have the right to say, yeah, they submitted to architecture, but it's obviously an AI talk because of how the abstract was written and the details and the abstract or the notes. So sometimes that's the case, and like AI is one of those perfect examples. AI can go across any one of these categories, and so we might put an AI talk in security or in DevOps or something like that if we feel like it's a little bit more geared towards that. But we do look at the number of submissions as well to choose those numbers, but that is not the primary. And if we did that, then this would be an AI conference, and that was not the intent of CodeMash. And so if people really want to talk about AI, there's lots of AI conferences as well. So we try to do the best mix we can. We try to make sure, if you notice, the common range is from 10 to 16 talks because it's intended to be a programming or developer conference. Programming principles gets slightly more. This is not intended to be a design specific conference, so that was a little bit less. So hopefully that explains it. It's not an exact science or mathematical equation that we do. I'm glad you pointed out the charts because I almost forgot. Now that I have my MBA, I am required by law to include charts and graphs in all my talks. So I complied. Well, again, good luck. Email us if you have questions. We're here to help you. And don't forget August 15th, August 31st. And then I hope to see you in January, regardless of what happens with your submissions. And have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.